Our Alaskan cruise on the Norwegian Encore was one we'll never forget, but not for all the right reasons. While embarkation and debarkation were a breeze, what came in between was a mix of highs and lows. From a nearly 2-hour wait for go-karts and long lines throughout our 7 days on board, the ship was crowded like never before. Some ports were so brief we barely had time to explore, and there was no turn-down service in our cabin. On the bright side, we met some amazing people. The Mojito Bar was a hit, and Choir of Man was the best show we've ever seen at sea. But with average food, inconsistent service, and a few disappointments, was this cruise worth it? Stick around as we dive into the full experience, the good, the bad, and why this cruise, despite some great moments, ended up being our least favorite yet. Hey y'all, you don't know us as we're new around here, but we're excited to share our family cruising adventures with you. I'm Evan. Much of what you're going to see from us here in the digital world will be from me, but the whole family's involved. That's Mackenzie. She's my amazing wife who's willing to put up my crazy antics, like starting a YouTube channel. And that's Kate, my fearless and kind-hearted daughter who is absolutely crazy about horseback riding. And that's Jackson, my sports and video game loving son who's so much like me at his age that it's not even funny. And together, we are
Family at Sea!
A new YouTube channel focused on sharing our cruising adventures so you can make the best possible memories with your own families. Hey y'all, I'm Evan with Family at Sea, where we help make every cruise unforgettable. Whether you're new here or a loyal subscriber, welcome. In today's video, I'll be diving into our recent Alaskan adventure aboard the Norwegian Encore. From the stunning glaciers to the unexpected hiccups, this cruise had a little bit of everything. We're talking long lines, way too short port calls, and some surprising highs and lows. But don't worry, it was not all bad. We found some hidden gems along the way that made the journey worthwhile. So grab a seat and let's take you through the full experience. What worked, what didn't, and whether this cruise is right for your next big adventure. Hello, are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready, Jay?
Yes.
You ready, Mama? All right, let's get on in there. Before you can board the ship, you'll need to go through the usual steps at the cruise port. For those of you new to cruising, this includes checking your bags, going through security, and completing check-in to get your sea passes. A few things you'll want to keep in mind here. When you arrive at Port 66 in Seattle, the first thing you'll do is give your luggage to one of the porters. You'll find them on the left side of the terminal when looking at the front of the large building. Make sure to have your luggage tags printed and ready. You can attach them to your bags with the stapler the porter provides when you arrive if you haven't already. If you didn't bring your luggage tags with you, you'll find a tent on the right side where you can get them on site. You'll also want to keep a carry-on bag with essentials like swimsuits, dinner clothes, and any medications you may need, just in case your luggage takes a while to reach your room. At check-in, you'll need a passport or U.S. birth certificate for everyone in your group, along with your cruise boarding pass, which can be printed or digital. Once you're checked in, you'll get your sea passes, or as Norwegian calls them, your freestyle card. This card is super important. It gets you on and off the ship, unlocks your room, and it's used for all your onboard purchases like food, drinks, arcade games, and even the casino. The Port of Seattle, known for its stunning waterfront views and efficient operations, makes embarking on a cruise smooth and hassle-free, even when boarding over 4,000 passengers onto the Norwegian Encore. So with all the formalities behind us, it's time to take that final walk up the gangway and step aboard this magnificent ship for an adventure through the breathtaking Alaskan waters. Ready to set sail? Before we get into what this cruise cost, a quick request. A lot of hard work goes into creating this content for you guys, and I genuinely hope you'll find it helpful as you plan your own cruise adventures. If you'd please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel, it would mean the absolute world to me. So with that out of the way, back to the review. The Norwegian Encore is a true giant in NCL's fleet, and you'll feel its impressive scale as soon as you step on board. This massive ship spans over 1,000 feet and rises 20 decks above the ocean, weighing in at nearly 170,000 gross tons. Now that's a big ship. With capacity to carry over 4,000 passengers, supported by a crew of nearly 1,700, the Encore has an adequate 2.5 passengers per one crew member. As we boarded on deck 7, we made our way down the long exterior stretch before boarding at the aft of the ship. Just a few steps inside and we were struck by the modern look and feel of this giant ship, ready to explore everything the Encore has to offer. Before we dive into all the exciting details of our journey on the Encore, let's take a moment to discuss price. Wondering what a 7-day Alaskan cruise for a family of 4 might set you back? Well, let's break it down, because a few factors can really influence your total. First off, the cabin type makes a big difference. For a budget-friendly option, an interior cabin on our Alaskan cruise cost around $6,300 for a family of 4 once you factor in all taxes and port fees. If you're looking for something with a view, a balcony room during our sailing was $9,200, roughly 46% more than an interior cabin. Ocean view rooms, which feature a porthole window but no balcony, were priced in between these two around $8,000. For those wanting the ultimate in luxury, the Haven Suites are where it's at. This exclusive section of the ship, often referred to as a ship within a ship, includes access to the Horizon Lounge, the Haven Restaurant, a private solarium pool and hot tub, and a private sun deck with 2 more hot tubs and ample lounging space without the crowd. Prices for these suites started at $16,000 and went up from there. As great as the Haven sounds, we weren't fortunate enough to stay in a Haven suite on the sailing, but we did have a club balcony stateroom, which is a slightly elevated balcony stateroom with 2 sinks in the bathroom, a bottle of wine on arrival, and some treats throughout the week. You're also going to get 1 bag of laundry and allows you to book your restaurant reservations a few days before the majority of passengers. It would be some time before the rooms were ready for people to drop their bags, which meant we had to lug our carry-ons around with us for several hours while we waited, which was unfortunate but not the end of the world. Since we were sailing as a family, that meant our room would be set up to sleep 4 for the week. To accommodate us, 2 double beds were pushed together to create a single queen-sized bed for Mackenzie and I, and then the couch converted into a bed for one of our kids, and a Murphy bed pulled down from the ceiling to create a bunk bed above the sofa, which Jackson and Kate traded throughout the week. One of the unfortunate things about Norwegian is they removed turn-down service during COVID, which meant we didn't have a sofa to use during our 7 days on the Encore. Not the end of the world, but it was disappointing, as this is one of those things that it's just a nice touch that a lot of cruise lines still offer that give things an elevated feel, because that's just not something you get at home. Upon boarding the ship, we learned that our rooms were not ready, so we made our way down to the Kids Club on Deck 5. Registering the kids at the Kids Club can be a lengthy process, so we always get this done as soon as we board a cruise ship to try and beat the crowds. Kids Clubs are an essential space for any family on a cruise ship. They're a hit among the young ones and a blessing for parents. These vibrant spaces offer a world of fun for the kids and some well-deserved downtime for the adults. The clubs don't open for kids until the evening of embarkation day, offering parents a chance to tour these areas before the kids take over and start having their own fun. We've got a detailed tour of each of the kids clubs in another video, but for now, let's take a peek into the Splash Academy. This is the kids club on the Encore that caters for 3 to 12-year-olds, and this is where our kids forged new friendships and crafted unforgettable memories. Splash Academy, long corridor to go down here. Bathrooms for the kiddos. Splash Academy register here. Got some hand washing stations. They got storage cubbies over here. Got some hopscotch here. All right, Kate showing us how it's done. Madden 20. That is an old Madden, isn't it? Trolls band together. Well, they might have newer ones too, but that is an old Madden. What do you think, guys? How's it look compared to like the last one we're on? Which is, it's a lot bigger. Got some video games, some more couches. It is kind of crazy wallpaper, isn't it? These clubs aren't just about fun. They're also about fostering independence as the kids learn to navigate new settings and meet new faces. And though it's always hard to say goodbye to new friends at the cruise's end, the joy and growth they experience are priceless. The pools are not as popular on an Alaskan cruise, but they're still an essential part of any cruise ship, so I'd be remiss not to share them with you. For a ship this size, the Encore unfortunately does not have many pools. On deck 16 midship, they have 2 pools side by side, one for adults and one for kids and their parents. Beyond this, there's an indoor solarium pool that only Haven guests have access to, and that's it. For an Alaskan cruise, that means the only pool that could be enjoyed without freezing most days was in that exclusive Haven space. So swimming and pool fun was simply not a viable option for 95% of guests on the Encore while sailing through Alaska. Worth noting here as well is that there are 2 water slides and an aqua park for little ones with a bucket that dumps water onto you and a smaller slide for them. Here it goes. Did it get you, Jay? It got you? I got smashed by the bucket of water. You want to do it? Come on. We did the Aqua Racer slide on day 1 before we left Seattle while it was still semi-warm, and the lines were nearly an hour long for what was honestly an underwhelming tube slide, especially when compared to the tube slide aboard the MSC Seascape and Seashore that we enjoyed recently. We tried to do the Ocean Loops drop slide as well, but it was closed on day 1. In fact, it was rarely open at all during our 7 days on Encore, but I finally managed to do it during our final day on the ship. Ocean Loops is a body slide, and unfortunately the seams of this slide are not very well aligned, so if I'm honest, it was quite painful as I raced down the slide. So that's just something to be aware of for those of you that enjoy water slides like our family does. On that Ocean Loop slide, it's probably going to hurt some. There's also 4 hot tubs up on deck 17 in the main pool area, plus more available in the Haven space as well as in Vibe, which is the private adults only sun deck available for $250 per person for a 7-day sailing. On a Caribbean cruise, this probably would have been worth it to have a bar that would be less busy, plus some hot tubs where you're not fighting to get a spot. But in Alaska, we didn't see the value in it, so we didn't get to see this space in person. The Encore is filled with a variety of different dining experiences. There are 3 different main dining rooms, plus a buffet filled with all different types of cuisines. If you're looking for something a step above, the Encore has 8 different specialty restaurants, plus the Haven restaurant for suite guests. During our 7 days on Encore, we dined in all but one of the specialty restaurants. We enjoyed Savor, one of the main dining rooms, on night 1, although their service was running behind, so we had to leave without dessert in order to see the show in the main theater. The food itself was honestly as good or better than we experienced in many of the specialty restaurants. So I got 2 different appetizers. The first one here is just cheese ravioli. So there's only 3 raviolis. It's really basic, but it looks good. So let's see, cheese ravioli. It's actually really good. Flavor's not overly complex. Has a nice cheese to it. The sauce that goes on top is quite nice. So I'm gonna go with a very good. That's not quite yummy, but that's tasty. I'm gonna enjoy all 3 of these.
I got the veggie burrito, grilled veggies and beans in it, and then a chili pepper, roasted. The sauce is also a little sweet on top, but I'll give it a very good. So maybe between a good and a very good.
We headed to Food Republic for lunch on day 2, which was an Asian fusion tapas restaurant with nice bright lighting and great views. The food was mostly good, but overall it was nothing special. All right, this is the kimchi fried rice with steak protein. There's a lot of different flavors in here. You got a fried egg, or actually it was a poached egg on top. So mix that in there so I get a good blend of flavors. Let's see. Not bad. I'll be honest, there's no real flavor that really stands out. I will eat some more of this, but it's not phenomenal either. I'm gonna go with the good on this one. For dinner that evening, we visited Onda by Scarpetta, the Italian restaurant on the Encore. We didn't think it would be at the time, but this is honestly one of the best meals we had on the entire ship. The service was good and the food was above average, though this really says more about the quality of the dining on the Encore than it does about Onda itself.
I got the spaghetti with sauce on the side. Let's see how it is. I give it a good. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad.
On night 3, after our first port call in Juneau, we had barbecue at the Q Smokehouse. The barbecue here was overcooked and dry, and the sauces weren't very good. Honestly, this was our least favorite of all the specialty restaurants on board. On evening 4, after a day in Skagway, we grabbed dinner in Le Bistro, which is the Encore's French restaurant. This was our favorite of the specialty restaurants. The service was fantastic, the food was very good, and it was presented very well as well. Day 5 was Glacier Bay Day, one of the best days on our Alaskan cruise, and we went to Cagney's for dinner, which is the signature steakhouse aboard the Encore. No cruise experience is complete for our family without visiting the onboard steakhouse. We always snag an early reservation for dinner, and although we had a table reserved for opening, we still ended up waiting in line nearly 20 minutes before we were seated. The food itself was mostly good aside from the lobster bisque, but it took over an hour to receive our entrees as the service struggled to keep up with the restaurant. Like much of the dining aboard the Encore, our experience at Cagney's was only okay. On day 6, we enjoyed dinner at Los Lobos, the Mexican restaurant on board, and it was pretty good. The menu was a bit limited, but we enjoyed what we had and the service was good as well. Unfortunately, when the Encore goes to dry dock in October, they're removing Los Lobos in favor of expanding Cagney's Steakhouse. Given our experience at Cagney's, I hope they can figure out how to improve their service since they really struggled during our meal and now it's going to be twice as large. On day 7, our last day on the Encore, we had dinner at Teppanyaki, which is another of the restaurants that will be expanding during dry dock as it takes over the space currently occupied by Coco's. The food here was average at best, but it was a fun experience that our kids enjoyed. They're not greatly different than a hibachi experience on board really any other cruise ship. Ocean House was the one specialty restaurant we did not experience, but this restaurant is going away during dry dock as well in favor of Palomar, which is going to be a Mediterranean themed restaurant with a mixture of menu items from both land and sea. We also enjoyed lunches at Local, which is a bar and grill on deck 7, and American Diner, which is a classic diner option on deck 17. These menus are included with your fare aside from the milkshakes that were a slight upcharge. The food was only average, but it was nice that they were included. The Garden Cafe is the buffet on the Encore. While it was very difficult to find an open seat oftentimes, the food was pretty decent considering it was a mass market buffet. For kids on the Encore, they have the same exact kids menu at every single restaurant no matter where you dine. Some themed kids options would have been appropriate in my opinion, but fortunately for us, we were able to have our kids order off the adult menu in many of these specialty restaurants so they could at least expand their palate some. The Encore has a Starbucks on board, which is great for those of you that enjoy your morning coffee and like having a menu that you're already familiar with. It would often take 20 to 30 minutes to get through the line and to get your caffeine fix, but honestly, that's not a whole lot different than any land-based Starbucks at peak times. The crew were friendly and worked hard to try and get everybody in and out as quickly as possible. Overall, dining on the Encore was only okay. The service struggled to keep up at a number of the restaurants, and there were very few menu items that scored a yummy, which is our top food score, and really not many that even scored a very good, which is our second highest score. We definitely did not leave the ship hungry by any means, but I did manage to lose 2 pounds on this cruise, which is both great and perhaps a sign of what we thought of the food overall. You'll find the Pulse Fitness Center, which is the Encore's gym, on deck 16 at the aft of the ship. The fitness center has a good amount of equipment with a variety of cardio equipment, weight machines, and free weights, though I didn't see any plates. There's also separate rooms for group fitness classes and cycle classes. The gym was often very crowded during the mornings, and the equipment was crammed in pretty tightly, so it could be overwhelming at times, but they seemed to have enough equipment for people, so you usually didn't have to wait for a machine. You just didn't have much room to work within. No cruise is complete without at least a little rest and relaxation in the spa. And the Mandara Spa, located right beside the gym on deck 16, is a great one. They have a large lobby area where you can get checked in and book your spa appointments. For us fellas, they have a barber shop where you can get a straight razor shave and even a haircut. They also have an even bigger salon for the ladies where they can get their hair done, in addition to a nail salon for their manicures and pedicures. They also have a number of different treatment rooms for massages, teeth whitening, and other things. We typically get a couples massage when we go on a cruise, but to give you a bit of a comparison there, a couples massage costs over $600. Compare that to what we did on Celebrity, where a couples massage was $400, and on MSC it was under $300. While we didn't take advantage of the massage services, we did indulge in the thermal suite, though it was pricey at $339 per person. That means $678 for 2 of us. If you've never indulged in a thermal spa on a cruise before, this is the ultimate area of relaxation relaxation on a cruise ship. On the Encore, in addition to a variety of different saunas, you'll also find different hot and cold shower experiences, in addition to an extremely large hot tub with a relaxation spot where you can get a shoulder or back massage thanks to a heavy downpour of water. And you'll even find a snow room. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. A room piled high with snow where you can have your very own snowball fight on the open seas. The arcades aboard the Encore are without a doubt one of the bright spots for those of you that are young or just young at heart. There's the Galaxy Pavilion, which is a huge virtual reality arcade up on deck 17 at the aft of the ship, a traditional video arcade on deck 5 between the Entourage Teens Club and Splash Academy Kids Club, and then a smaller arcade on deck 7 next to Local, which had a few different arcade machines in addition to pool and darts. Arcades on many ships are in states of disrepair with lots of machines non-functional, but almost every machine in every arcade was fully functional on the Encore. It was honestly pretty impressive. Whatever they're doing to keep things maintained is working, as even when we encountered an issue, there was always a crew member nearby who was able to help. All right, here Kate goes on her Flymax adventure. Sorry. Kate's adventure has begun. That wind blowing in her face as she soars through the skies. Woo!
I'm not steering.
Oh, you're just riding. Don't get too crazy, Kate. Jackson's got some technical difficulties over there. For any of you that have done a virtual reality arcade game before, you know they can be a bit cheesy, and the Galaxy Pavilion was no exception, but it was a fun experience nonetheless. My kids loved the variety of different games and experience options they had, and the entire family enjoyed a soccer shootout as the cruise was winding down on the evening of day 7. Alright, the Galaxy Pavilion closed in 8 minutes for the rest of the cruise. We're finally gonna play soccer. We're excited because I just beat everybody in laser tag. And now I'm about to beat everybody in soccer.
Not by much. A newbie who's never tried.
I haven't played laser tag since her brother's bachelor party over a decade ago.
I never have.
Who's gonna be the best shooter?
Ooh, you know Mama's getting serious when she takes the...
No.
Here we go! Remember, Kate, just like you did in soccer.
Almost.
Ooh, that was a good first kick though, Kate. All right, Kate, one more kick. Make this your best.
You got it, girlfriend.
We'll count it, we'll count it. Good job, girl.
Now, an assist by the wall, but you got it.
Here he goes. Oh, nice try. Good luck, Mom. She played soccer in all the way through
All
first
the way
grade.
through, never. Didn't even do it right. I was trying to see if it would bounce off.
I mean, that was pretty good.
He's got the speed.
I got to get it faster than the goalkeeper. That's the strategy.
That was what I tried the first time.
Yeah, I tried to do that thing that Kate did, but I can't do that. I just got to power this thing.
Oh, almost.
I don't think you can beat on speed. You got to do that thing Kate did that I did not do. So
Kate wins.
Kate wins.
Winner, winner.
All
Good
right.
job, Kate.
The video arcade down in deck 5 is a decent sized arcade for a cruise ship with many different prizes to choose from after your kids have had their fun in what I like to call the kids casino. The ticket machine that converts the paper tickets into receipts to redeem for prizes was really the only machine that gave us any trouble, but there was a crew member right there in the arcade that was able to quickly help when we did run into problems. Overall, we were very impressed with the arcades on board the Encore, so kudos to UNCL. This was definitely a bright spot. The casino on deck 7 is a great place to unwind and have some fun. With more than 300 slot machines and 26 table games, the casino on the Encore was one of the largest I've seen on a cruise ship. When you consider the number of passengers on board, it's likely the highest ratio of machines and table games to passengers I've seen on any ship. One of the biggest attractions for many cruise ship casinos for me is having to play in a cloud of cigarette smoke. Some, like on Celebrity, have gone smoke-free, which I truly appreciate, but Norwegian has gone the route of having 2 full-size complete completely segregated casinos, one for smoking and one that is smoke-free. Oftentimes you'll see a small separate section of a casino for smokers or a small separate section of a casino for non-smokers, but this is the first time I've seen a full-sized casino for both. The casino has lots of table games, a nice variety of slot machines, very professional and efficient dealers, and even a separate VIP room for high rollers, something I don't see very often on cruise ships. There's also a nice bar with poker machines in the middle of the casino as well. The only real drawback about the casino on this sailing was pretty limited hours, but this was largely because it was so port intensive, which is really not a bad thing. The casino on the Encore was definitely a bright spot, and if you can game responsibly, it's an area where you can unwind and have some real fun. The Encore Theater is the main theater on the Encore. The seating is comfortable, though there's nothing remarkable about the theater itself. There are also two large columns obstructing views for some of the rows toward the back, and unlike many theaters on modern ships, there's no upper level mezzanine seating. There was drink service available at our seats before the shows, but no bar available in the theater, as you often find set up on other ships. Choir of Man was the premier show on the Encore during our sailing, and it did not disappoint. In fact, it was the best show we've ever seen on a cruise ship, up there with many of the Broadway shows we've seen in New York. While it didn't have any of the overtop special effects or acrobatics like you might see on a Royal Caribbean cruise, the music was absolutely fantastic and the story was fun to follow along with. Unfortunately, the rest of the shows were largely a disappointment. They had a Beatles tribute band play a number of evenings. While they were talented, at least for our millennial family, one Beatles show would have been enough. We didn't see the need for an entire discography to be performed covering all eras of their music over multiple nights. On the final day, we had a late port call in Victoria, so they had an earlier comedy showing in the main theater, and there were two comedians that left something to be desired. I saw one of the two comedians perform the evening before in the social club, and he repeated some of the same exact comment, and it wasn't even really that funny the first time. So I love a good comedy show, but this wasn't a good one. Beyond the main Encore Theater, there were also smaller shows available in different areas of the ship, like the social club and cavern club. Oddly enough, while both of these areas have their own bars, the bars were not always open during or even before the shows. Like many other areas of the ship, operating hours for these bars seemed to be sporadic and unreliable during our 7 days on the Encore. If you're huge Beatle fans and the showings in the main theater are not enough, you can also catch them on multiple nights in the Cavern Club. The social club was used for a number of different events, including comedy shows, a nightclub, and it also hosted the art auctions on board. Overall, while Choir of Man was the best show we've seen at sea, the shows on the Encore truly left something to be desired. For a cruise line that was once known for their excellent shows, the budget cuts here have had a negative impact on the cruise experience for people like us who enjoy the shows on board. Encore hosted a variety of events throughout the day, including in the evening. Their sail away party on the Lido deck was a ton of fun as they played music while throwing t-shirts and giving away prizes to the kids in attendance. As the sun went down and after people finished dinner and their shows, the interior areas of the ship tended to get very crowded. They had a lot of fun games, dance classes, and various activities in the main atrium space on Deck 6, which also included the atrium bar. If you were lucky, the bars in the social club and cavern club would be open, but these seemed to have irregular hours, so it was really luck of the draw about whether they'd be open and serving drinks when you wanted to grab one. Our favorite board was likely Sugarcane, the mojito bar up on deck 8. If you're a mojito fan like we are, they have a great variety of mojito drinks. They also have a stage where they had some good music throughout the week. Our other favorite spot was the District Brew House. They had a good selection of craft beers, a few good cocktails, and a really great vibe with open seating, with wide open views and large windows that flooded the space with natural light during the day and gave a wide open look at the stars and the moon in the evenings. If you're a whiskey fan, there's also a whiskey bar in Deck 8 called Maltings that seemed to be popular, but I'm not a whiskey fan, so this wasn't a spot where I spent much time. One of the standout attractions on the Encore is the Encore Speedway, which is the go-kart track with single-seater go-karts for drivers that are at least 55 inches tall. For younger ones or the vertically challenged, there are select windows where they race two-seat go-karts where shorter folks can ride as a passenger. Our son didn't meet the height requirement for the single karts, so we did the double karts. We arrived 15 minutes before the attraction opened and still found ourselves pretty far back in the line. The go-karts are electric and they only have 4 of those two-seaters, and when the batteries die, there's no quick way to refill them. So when one of the 4 died prematurely, it meant there were only 3 racing at a time. We waited in line nearly 2 hours before having our chance to race, but we at least got to experience them. There were many people behind us in line who waited just as long that never got a chance to do them at all. I talked to a crew member and mentioned that it seems like perhaps taking advance reservations would be a better way to do things so you didn't have a bunch of upset passengers, because there were plenty. But he told me they used to do that, but you'd have a bunch of people who would make reservations and then never show up, and so you'd still end up with a bunch of upset people because they weren't able to get reservations. I've read online conflicting information about how many laps you get to do. Some things said 10 laps and others said 3 or 4. For us, we were able to do 4 laps, so we waited in line for 2 hours for an experience that lasted 2 or 3 minutes. One of the other attractions on the ship was laser tag, located at the aft of the ship behind the Encore Speedway. We didn't have high expectations for this going into things, but we were pleasantly surprised at just how much fun we had. There was no line to play, one of the few things I can say that about on the Encore, and the experience lasted 10 minutes and it was honestly a blast. Even Mackenzie had a ton of fun. This is not something she would generally go for at all. Alright, we're getting loaded up and ready to go. Kate, let's see that game face.
Hey!
Ooh, mama. Jackson? That's a scared face. You scared? I think I'm doing well, but I'm not sure. I haven't died yet, at least. I had to reload. You got me! Good job, you got me. Good job. The disappointing news here, at least for us, is that they announced they're removing laser tag when the Encore goes to dry dock in October. I know many of you will be happy to hear they're replacing it with Spice H2O, which is an adults only area that will have a bar, lounge chairs, and infinity waiting pools and hot tubs, but for families like us, it's sad that they're getting rid of one of the few things there are for kids to do. On deck 15 is the Observation Lounge, which is one of the true gems of the Encore, especially on an Alaskan cruise like we were on. We spent the day in the Observation Lounge while sailing through Glacier Bay, and it was absolutely incredible. Not only are there great views across the entire lounge, there's also food and drinks available to you. There were park rangers set up to share information, and there were booths where you could buy things like binoculars and souvenirs from those park rangers. There's also one of the best bars aboard the Encore where you can grab a drink while taking in some of the best views on the ship. The Observation Lounge was one of the highlights of our trip, without a doubt. Unfortunately, one of the other things they announced during the upcoming dry dock in October is they're going to be removing a portion of the lounge to add more rooms. The Observation Lounge was completely full as we sailed through Glacier Bay, so it's disappointing to hear they're making this space smaller, but I imagine it's probably less popular during Caribbean sailings since more people make use of the outdoor spaces. Like we do with every cruise, we went into our journey on the Norwegian Encore with zero expectations. Like every cruise, there were some bright spots and some areas that we really didn't care for. When I'm reviewing ships, I do my best to always be objective, and to help with that, we have what we call the Cruiser's Beacon. This is a standardized system we use to score different cruise ships against one another. Some things to note here. Our rating will be based on a scale from 1 to 10, but we're going to try not to ever use a score of 7 because that's essentially the it wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible default score, and I want to try and force us to really put some thought into things. There will be times where we're sailing in a suite that comes with premium amenities and services. However, 95% of the people on these ships are not in a suite, so those are not things we'll be considering when we do our scoring. On the Encore, we weren't in a suite, so that's really not a factor here, but it's important enough that I still wanted to make sure I mentioned it. With those considerations out of the way, the categories will be scoring things based on our crew, which is the staff on board the ship. That's potentially the most important part of any cruise experience. You can be on a completely average ship with an incredible crew and still have a great experience. But on the flip side, even on the greatest ship, if the crew doesn't do their part, you're probably not going to have a very good time. The second category is dining. Food is one of the things people talk about the most after their cruising adventures, so we want to make sure you know exactly what to expect, not only for the food, but also the service that comes along with it. The third category is entertainment. We love a great show. Whether it's in the main theater, a lounge, or anywhere else on the ship, the onboard entertainment is extremely important to us, and we know it is to a lot of you as well. The fourth category is family friendly. For this category, we'll be providing a rating after considering things like how fun are the kids clubs, how many kid-friendly activities are there, how is the staff with kids, how many different kid-friendly food options are they, and how good are they, and anything else that may impact our kids' enjoyments of the ship. The next category is the ship. The ship itself makes a big difference. Is it clean? Have things been well maintained, or are lots of things broken? Are things well laid out? How crowded do things feel? There's a lot to consider here to fit all into a single category, but I'm going to do my best to do exactly that. And the final category is value. This category measures the overall experience versus the price paid for the cruise. It also factors things in like how much is actually included in the fare versus things that are an additional cost. And finally, the overall score will be a composite of those 6 categories to come up with an average of those that can be used to objectively measure ships against one another as we do more of these. Alright, the moment you've all been waiting for. How does the Encore measure up? I'm going to share that with you right now. First up, the crew. While we didn't have any major issues with the crew aboard the Encore, we also didn't have any moments that left us thinking, wow, that was incredible. On our sailing, there were 4,600 guests compared to 1,700 crew members, which is a guest to crew ratio of 2.7 to 1, which is about average for many of the mainline cruise ships. With that said, it often felt like crew members were stretched thin. NCO has eliminated turn-down service in the staterooms in the evenings, which is one of those special touches that really gives cruises a luxury feel that you just don't get at home. We also noticed that many of the crew members were stretched thin doing a variety of different jobs, more so than what we typically see on other ships. As a result, we never really felt like we connected with any of the crew members, and they just didn't seem to be as happy as what we typically experience on other cruise lines. For this reason, I'm scoring the crew on the Encore a 5 out of 10. Next up is food. We enjoy experiencing a variety of dining experiences, so we only had a single meal in one of the main dining rooms aboard the Encore. The other 6 dinners we ate were in different specialty restaurants across the ship. We never went hungry on the Encore, but there was very little food that we'd order a second time. In addition to this, I'm a big creme brulee fan, and creme brulee was not on the menu in any of the restaurants on the ship. They did have a raspberry creme brulee in the Cagney's Steakhouse, but this was too sweet for my taste and not what I was looking for. Overall, I'd say the Encore had the least memorable food of any cruise we've ever been on. Most of it wasn't outright bad, it just wasn't particularly good. On the service side of things, aside from a very slow start and disappointing experience in Cagney's, it wasn't bad most of the time. We did experience some delays at Savor, which was the main dining room that caused us to have to skip dessert. Overall, there were some hiccups along the way, but the main impression I have from the Encore was that there was just truly nothing memorable about the staff in any of the restaurants. If this score was based purely on the food, I would score it a 2 or 3 out of 10, but since service also factors in here, I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Still not good, but slightly better than the food alone. Next up is entertainment. Choir of Man was without a doubt one of the best shows we've ever seen at sea. We've seen better shows in terms of acrobatics like the aqua shows on Royal Caribbean, but in terms of storytelling, choreography, and music performance, the show lived up to the pretty lofty expectations many people thrust upon it. We were truly impressed, and I'd be fine seeing it again someday. Norwegian used to have 2 big shows on each of their ships, but unfortunately in their ongoing effort to cut their budget, they cut back 2 shows to 1, and as a result, the rest of the entertainment just left something to be desired. They had a Beatles tribute band play in the main theater multiple nights, and while they were good, unless you're a die-hard Beatles fan, which we're not, seeing them once in 7 days was enough. The other show they had in the main theater was a comedy show, and a lot of the material in this show was recycled by one of the comedians from what he showed in the Social Club the evening before. I'm a big stand-up comedy fan, but this was easily the worst comedy show I have ever seen. If everything was as great as Choir of Man, I would easily score this a 10 out of 10. On the flip side of that, if everything was as bad as the other shows we saw during the week, it'd be a 3 out of 10. The reality though is that all the shows need to be factored in, so I'm going to score this a 6 out of 10. Alright, so now a category that really matters to us. How family friendly are things on the Encore? But unfortunately, it did not measure up. This category ended up being a big surprise for us. We chose the Encore because we thought it would be the most family friendly of the cruise options that passed through Glacier Bay, but unfortunately it simply didn't measure up. The lines for everything family friendly were extremely long. The line for the only slide our kids could do was nearly an hour long, and it wasn't even that good. The other slide they have on board had extremely limited hours. In fact, it wasn't even open until day 3, and neither of my kids were even big enough to experience it. They only have a single kid-friendly pool available to those of us staying outside the Haven, and it was outdoors, which meant it was pretty much useless for our 7-day voyage through Alaska. The kids club wasn't a favorite of my kids, but they did still enjoy it. Fortunately, Norwegian moved away from their previous virtual queue system, and we never had an issue getting our kids in or out of the kids club. The go-karts had a nearly 2-hour line, and a significant portion of the people waiting in that line didn't even get to ride them before things closed. Laser tag was a highlight for both us and our kids, but that's unfortunately being removed in favor of the adults-only area called Spice H2O during their October dry dock. The one other bright spot here were the arcades. My kids had a ton of fun in the Galaxy Pavilion, which is the virtual reality arcade on board, and their 2 traditional arcades on board were extremely well maintained and were never too crowded. Kid-friendly food on the Encore was also pretty disappointing. They had the same kids menu in every restaurant across the ship, no matter if it's an MDR or a specialty restaurant that you're paying extra for. Fortunately, our kids tried some things from the adults menu in some of the restaurants, but they should really consider making a kid-friendly menu relating to the theming of each restaurant. Overall, I would say this is probably the least family-friendly ship we've been on in our many cruises, so I'm scoring it a 3 out of 10. And now the ship itself. The ship was in good condition. We didn't see much in the way of wear and tear anywhere on the ship. They've done a really good job of keeping things feel fresh and clean. Even though we'd already upgraded to their Free at Sea Plus package, which includes unlimited internet, if we wanted to be able to access things like YouTube, which is important to us for obvious reasons, we had to pay for an additional upgrade. However, even after paying for this expensive upgrade, bandwidth was still extremely limited, clocking speeds of less than 5 megabits per second download and less than 1 megabit per second upload. Worse though was, this was easily the most crowded ship we have ever been on. We often see people complain about how crowded MSC and Carnival ships can be, but those ships tend to have crowded areas, but also areas where you can escape the crowds. On the Encore, it felt impossible to escape the crowds. If you're willing to sit outside in the Alaska cold, you could find a quiet spot, but that's not something you want to experience for too long as you're sailing through Alaska. I will say this, I think our experience on the Encore would have been significantly better if this were a Caribbean sailing, as this would have eased the congestion considerably as people could have used the pools and the waterfront promenade. With that said, with this being an Alaskan sailing and people mostly being forced to stay indoors, it felt extremely crowded with long lines everywhere we went. Based on these factors, I'm going to score the ship a 4 out of 10. Before I move on to the next category, if you found anything of value or of interest in this video, would you please do me a huge favor and like this video and subscribe to our channel? This is your way to let YouTube know that you appreciate the content being created and that they should show it to more people, and it would mean the world to me. So with that out of the way, how good of a value is a cruise on the Encore? Norwegian likes to tout its free at sea promotion that nearly everybody gets, which includes a basic drink package, 2 specialty dining experiences, free Wi-Fi, and free excursions. However, all of these things have pretty significant strings attached. The drink package doesn't include some of the higher end drinks, but it also doesn't include some pretty basic things such as bottled water. The free Wi-Fi only provides up to 150 minutes on a 7-day sailing. And if you're going to try and make that last, remember to log out when you're done. The free excursions was only a $50 credit, which was only really enough to cover the most basic and the most crowded excursions. And factor into that, the cost for a balcony stateroom on the sailing for a family of 4 was over $9,000. So to call this free at sea really just means NCL has already built this into the price. Needless to say, Norwegian is extremely expensive. Compare that to every other mainline cruise company out there aside from Disney, and this is easily the most expensive we've come across. When you pair the high price with it being extremely crowded, no turndown service, and being nickeled and dimed on so many things across the ship, well, it does not score well when it comes to value. So here I'm scoring it a 3 out of 10. So we've scored all the individual categories. How do they stack up when combined? The Encore's combined score of 25 divided by 6 categories gives us an overall score of 4.16 out of 10, which is the lowest we have seen on any cruise so far. So that's it, guys. Our in-depth review of the Norwegian Encore is a wrap. If you stuck with us until the end, a sincere thank you. Worth mentioning, this was not a bad cruise experience. In fact, we've never been on a bad cruise, but some cruises are better than others, and the Encore simply did not measure up. The Encore may be worth sailing on in the Caribbean, but it's not a ship or an experience I would recommend for an Alaskan sailing. With that said, if you've already booked your cruise on the Encore, I wouldn't let this worry you too much. I'm sure you'll still have an amazing experience. You guys, thank you so much for watching and for being a part of the Family at Sea community. Until next time, smooth seas, happy sails, and here's to making incredible memories on your next cruise vacation. Bon voyage!